Hello, this is Miss Andrea. Since I would rather do anything than work on my master's thesis right now, I'm gonna go ahead and make a video about just an experience that I had pertaining to speaking about homeschooling. Um, so I was on TikTok minding other people's business, as you do, and ended up in this like TikTok live, like multi-person chat session. And, I really shouldn't have been in there because some of the things they were talking about just did not fit my values. Like when you can and can't say the N word, and taking out, a person who says it, and just like a whole lot of nonsense. And it bothered me. They're talking about lies. It was derogatory. And I should have known better than to hang out, honestly. But it'd been a really bad week, and I was just, looking to interact with some humans. And so I'd been making statements saying, hey, but maybe we shouldn't speak about people like this, or, maybe we should find another way to relate. And then I said something to the effect of, I'm used to being in white spaces. And he said, well, obviously. So, yeah, I'm not Czech. Anyway, so I don't even remember what the point of the conversation was. But I just wanted to give some kind of analogy of something I experienced being in white spaces, and, how I deal with that, versus being like, I'm going to take them out, And I said, that I'm a homeschool consultant, an educator, and, that's typically a very white population. And then I said, I just really believe that more Black people should try to homeschool because of the stressors that children face in schools. It would be best if, before like the age of 10, those stressors were avoided, because a child's self-confidence and sense of self is higher if they don't feel targeted, when they're 6, 7, 8 years old. And oh my gosh, I have never been screamed. It has been 20 years since I felt bullied about being a homeschooler. And I don't ask for approval. And so if you go back to like 10, 12 years ago when I first started making homeschool videos, there's some old videos on here. I hid most of them because they're hard to look at. But there's some old videos where I'm, arguing the points that I'm being bullied about. But if I remember correctly, because this woman was screaming questions at me, and then when I tried to answer them, she would scream at me for talking over her. So she wanted to scream questions at me. She wanted to lecture me, but she didn't want me to answer. And so she said, how do you call yourself an educator if you can't even listen? First of all, I'm not your child. I don't need to listen to you. Second of all, I said, well, how do you call yourself a moderator if you can't listen? And then she just started flinging the F word because I dared call her a moderator when she was a host. Look it, I'm old. The tickety-tocketies are not my deal. I don't know a whole lot about the tickety-tocketies, but clearly if you call a host a moderator, you about to get your butt handed back to you. Is what it is. So I'm gonna go ahead and answer some of those questions. What do you think? Let's do that. So this here, one of the things we discussed, one of the things I said that she didn't believe was that, kindergarten students, very young children, are getting placed in handcuffs and sent to the jailhouse. I mean, maybe not in cells, but they're being treated hardly. And so she looks up one article where a little girl had done some things, a little child, kindergarten, had thrown a tantrum, and they handcuffed this child and they took it to juvie or whatever. And she felt that they were justified in doing that because the child was bad. I don't think there's ever a reason to put a child in handcuffs. But here's the thing. This is a different article. Handcuffs in hallways. Hundreds of elementary students arrested at United States schools. This says, don't make a move. The officer said as he pinned the struggling subject to the ground. The officer tightened the handcuffs around the subject's thin wrists. Ow, ow, it really hurts, the subject exclaimed. The officer pressed his weight into the subject's small body, while school staff watched it all unfold. The person he was restraining was 7 years old. If you, my friend, are not acquainted with the juvenile justice system, you will be shortly, the officer told him. So, let me change windows. There we go. So, earlier that day, the child had allegedly spit on a teacher. And so now he was handcuffed and going to jail. This is a North Carolina school. The child had autism. The little kindergarten girl who was acting up had, diagnosed behavior issues. Scenes have played out in viral incidents. Police officers arresting young children like him in school, often violently. 10-year-old with autism was pinned down and cuffed in Denton, Texas. Another boy with autism, just 11 years old, handcuffed, dragged out of school, and forced into the sheriff's deputy car in Colorado. That same year, this is a child, no, different child. Officers handcuffed and screamed at a 5-year-old who had wandered away from school. There are many more cases of young children arrested in school, cases that don't make headlines, according to CBS News analysis of the latest data of the U.S. Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights. What they're not stating is that most of these kids are black. Because a black child and a white child can do the same really bad behavior at school. And the white kid, they'll say, oh, he has autism. And the black kid, they'll say, he's deviant. And it's true. And that's why I believe that more black people should consider homeschooling their kids. This is not any kind of shade to white people. It's just that people are biased. And black kids are treated harsher. And it's just a stinking fact. And so, children with documented disabilities are 4 times more likely to be arrested at school. Young children with disabilities are more likely to be arrested at school. With disabilities? Without disabilities. Okay? I believe a lot is a misunderstanding with... How do you misunderstand with a child? Oh, my word. And here's black. Black elementary school students arrested at a disproportionate rate. Okay. For every 40,000 students, 1 white child will get arrested. For every 40,000 students, 5.5 black children will get arrested. That's insane. These disparities can be explained, at least in part, by the mentalities of the officers who work in the schools. So, that was the first point that we were arguing. That was the first point that I was getting my butt handed to me on. That, why should black kids homeschool? Parents just need to make them be better kids. That's not going to fix the problem. Okay, the next thing was, she said, so this is dangerous. What you're saying is that you think black parents should homeschool, and remember, they're single parents. I didn't know all black parents were single parents. My kids weren't raised by single parents. I wasn't raised by single parents. My husband wasn't raised by single parents. Do you know what I mean? So she was saying, you're saying they're single, you want these single parents to homeschool and risk their livelihood, and then these children aren't even going to come out, these children are going to come out unsocialized. It's the same tired arguments from 2002. This is the year 2023. Is that what year it is? Yeah. So let's talk about single parent homeschooling. Can it work? I know a few single parent homeschooling parents who are single. I have a grandmother raising a child in my program, and I have a single parent raising a child in my program, and I have an aunt. Nope, she's married, raising a child in my program. So, like, families don't have to be nuclear anyway. But you don't have to be married to homeschool. Is it harder? A little bit. You have to rely on the kindness of other homeschool families. Maybe they might pick up your kids and drop them at the homeschool co-op that their kids are being dropped at for the day. Maybe they invite them on a trip to the museum. Maybe your mom and them watch your child during the day while you work, and then when you come home in the evening, you and your child spend 4 hours homeschooling, because it doesn't matter what time of the day you homeschool. Once your kid hits high school, your kid should be able to do their work on their own. And then when you come home, you spend 1 or 2 hours going over things. So the conclusions she was jumping through were comical and extreme. And even though I was married when I was homeschooling, and still am, 2006, 2007, 2008, 2009, maybe 2010 were bad financial years for us. And I got an online job. And I homeschooled during the day, 2 days a week. Depends on the year. I dropped my kids off at the local homeschool co-op. I worked those days that my kids were at the homeschool co-op, and I worked from like 5 p.m. to midnight other days with my online job. So, like, to make believe that Black people are incapable of figuring out how to homeschool is unfair to Black people. And as a Black person, that just seems like it was just something. It just seemed like a lot of self-hate was happening there. There's no such thing as the perfect homeschool family. Single parents homeschool all the time. Parents on the road homeschool all the time. A lot of homeschool parents are self-employed for the reason of homeschooling. So her assuming that all Black families were single and therefore couldn't homeschool. First of all Black families aren't single. I don't know what her situation is. But second, even if they are, single families homeschool all the time. Okay. The elephant that I thought had left the room and somehow found its way back in is socialization. You can't homeschool Black kids because now they're going to become unsocialized. And so how are you going to sit on TikTok and talk bad about white people, really bad about them, and then in the next breath when you disagree with what I'm saying, say, but Black kids need to be in mixed race classrooms? I am so confused. All right. So there's a large body of research focused on whether or not children who are homeschooled are well socialized. Most of this research finds that being homeschooled does not harm children's development of social skills as measured in these studies. In fact, some research finds that homeschooled children score more highly than children who attend school on measurements of socialization. However, this research has major limitations. It does not reflect on the experiences of many homeschool alumni, because it's a different generation. You know, in their 2020 review of literature on homeschooling, researchers Robert Kunzman and Milton Gaither noted that studies of homeschooling socialization have 3 major limitations. 1, studies typically draw on a volunteer sample of homeschool students. 2, studies typically rely entirely on home educators and homeschool children's self-reports. 3, studies typically treat school attendance as a binary. It does not take into account whether children attend school part-time or enrolled in co-ops. So, yeah, there's some variables that either strengthen and or weaken the argument regardless of, whatever you're talking about, however you want to look at it. But the overall research shows that homeschool students tend to pass socialization skill tests better than public school students. Like, have you ever been in a public school class and had a teacher say, you're not here to socialize? Because they say it all the time. And so the difference, okay, if you want to define socialization, let's just go ahead and do it. If you want to define socialization, everyone thinks of it as this first definition, which says the activity of mixing socially with others. That's socializing. But actual socialization is the process of learning to behave in a way that is acceptable to society. Parents can't teach you how to behave in the way that is socially acceptable to society. Furthermore, do you really want your children learning to behave from other children? Most young homeschoolers, teenage homeschoolers I know and that I work with, don't behave like children. They behave like someone a little older because of their access to adults. They deal with adults on a different level. And so they behave more mature. And honestly, why not? And when they become adults, they're gonna need to relate to adults. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't think what people think of a socialization in school is real socialization. It's socializing, and programs like mine provide those opportunities for kids, and they're everywhere. Homeschool co-ops, homeschool hybrids, which is the kind of program I have where you go to school part-time, very relaxed school part-time, just play groups, things like that, theater programs, dance, the same things that every other kid does after school. Homeschoolers do it. They may do it during school hours, but they're all doing all of those things. And typically these days, there's a decent mix of races out there. Okay. Let's get it from the experts, shall we? The term socialization refers to the process through which a child gains the social skills they need to effectively navigate the social norms and behaviors of the broader society. Children who are homeschooled, like all other children, need to build the social fluency that will enable them to negotiate a variety of different social situations, develop and maintain strong relationships, and work well with others in varying contexts. So, I don't think fear of socialization is a reason to not homeschool Black kids. Black kids are out there socializing all the time. You're not going to let me read this? Are you kidding? Okay, so paywall, not paying it. The rise of Black homeschooling. Black homeschooling is constantly on the rise. If it wasn't growing fast before COVID, it is growing now. Why? Because parents realized that once they had to take charge at home and help their kids learn, that their kids weren't really learning all that they thought they were learning. And even the ones that were learning lost so much ground during COVID that the parents, decided to step in. But even before that, I can't get the New Yorker magazine article. Let's see if I can get the Time one. For Black parents resisting whitewashed history, homeschooling is an increasingly popular option. So, book bans and history erasure. If there was never a better reason to consider homeschooling a Black child, these are it. Yeah, I think these are it. Stupid me, whatever. And so I actually write history books. I'm in the process of writing a 4-set series of world history books, and there'll be other books, coming after that. But because I teach homeschoolers, and this is written for homeschoolers, I am not taking out the unhappy parts. And I get to teach these to my students of mixed races. And I'll tell you what, some of these white kids discuss racial atrocities easier than the black kids do. And for black kids, that's super comforting. Sometimes the white kids struggle a little with the subject matter, because sometimes it does make you feel kind of way. But if you have a teacher who can reassure them and say, there were bad people who did these bad things, but you can be a good person who makes sure it never happens again, they're okay. And why people don't want kids to learn this in school is beyond me. So just yet another reason to homeschool black families. And this was written in 2022. And I stand by the assertion. It's so funny. This whole family just likes to stand in chairs. Find this time.com article called "For Black Parents Resisting Whitewash History, Homeschooling is an Increasingly Popular Option." The family's just too stinking cute. Oh, look at that picture. Everyone in beanbags. That is so adorable. The photographer did an amazing job. Oh, so cute with this story. I think more black families should homeschool. I don't think that black families who have it in their heart to homeschool are incapable of doing so. Do I think every black family should homeschool? No. I don't think every family should homeschool. I don't think every white family should homeschool. I don't think any family should homeschool. But I do think that if your child is in a situation where school is traumatic, then you need to remove them. I think if your child is in a situation where their worldview is closing because they're not allowed to read your average book, or history, slaves are called immigrant helpers, I think that's dangerous. If we want to talk about what's dangerous, let's talk about how education is getting dumbed down. Don't come yelling at me for saying black kids should homeschool when black kids aren't getting what they need in the schools. Okay? If it is in your heart to homeschool, homeschool. If it is not in your heart to homeschool, don't come at me for saying it. Okay. Till next time.